you as you drive. Do you know I'm looking? And I can't help but smile. Do you know how much I love you? You put my favorite song on, I put my feet up, and we just sing along. And I can't help but feeling, just loving this moment. Can we stay here forever? I'm loving this moment. Can we stay here together? If I could stop the time, don't you know that I would? 'Cause I'm just loving.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to our channel. My name is Anne, and this is Postcards from Our Golden Years. So today, I thought that I would share with you some of the top questions that we continue to get asked over and over and over again. And we've answered a lot of these in past videos, but sometimes people are kind of new here and they don't have time, or they don't want to go back and start watching all the old videos over and over and over again just because they're looking for that one answer. Now, I may not pick the question that you're looking for, and if I didn't, unfortunately, you might have to watch some of those past videos because we pretty much covered all the details that most people could possibly need in order to just say, you know what, I've had enough of the U.S., I'm moving to France. Let me just say, these are in no particular order. So we're just going to roll with it. Bear with me. And if I missed your question, that's what comments are down below, and I'll be happy to answer the question either down there or in a future video. So anyway, question number one that we get, probably one of the top questions, and that is it really that hard to find a rental in Nice, France? Come on, that's just an exaggeration, isn't it? Sad to say, no, it's not an exaggeration. When Jeff and I went apartment hunting back in the day, which at this point, I feel like it was back in the day, but it was really not so long ago, we started searching for our apartment. Let's see, we moved to France at the beginning of April in 2024. And shortly after we made our application for our long stay visas, and before we actually got the visas back, because our appointment, our in-person appointment wasn't for another, I think we scheduled it for like a month and a half after we sent in the actual application. After we made that in-person appointment, we decided we don't want to be one of those people stuck without an apartment and have to come to France and live in an Airbnb. So we worked with Adrian Leeds Agency, and we were very, very pleased with what they did. And they agreed to help us find an apartment before we actually moved, which saved us a lot of money. And let me tell you why. We did it because, first of all, it's not easy to find an apartment. Apartments are really at a shortage here in Nice and in most major cities. I mean, talk to most of the experts. They're going to tell you the same thing. And anybody who has come here without an apartment, the majority of people who've come here without an apartment will tell you it did take a while to finally find the apartment they're looking for. We started looking for our apartment right after we applied for our visa. We only wanted to move one time. Jeff and I hate moving. I mean, I probably have moved 10 times in the last 11 years. I don't think he's moved that much himself, but he and I have moved together 1, 2, 3, now 4 times in the last 10 years. Anyway, we knew that if we did not have an apartment before we moved to Nice, we would have to rent an Airbnb. And so I did a little research, and the cost of an Airbnb for a 2-bedroom, 2-bath, or 2-bedroom, 1-bath Airbnb, they were running between 3,000 and 4,000 euros per month. That's crazy. It's not that we didn't have the money, it's that we didn't want to spend that kind of money, even if it was just for 3 months. That's 9,000 euros. We knew that if we could find an apartment with an annual rent, when you divided it out monthly, the average annual rent for a 2-bedroom, 1-bath, 2-bedroom, 2-bath was somewhere in the neighborhood of maybe 1,500 to 1,900 euros a month. So why spend 3,000 to 4,000 euros a month living in an Airbnb, spinning our wheels, trying to search by ourselves? And in fact, that's one of the reasons we used Adrian Leeds to find our apartment for us, because even though we had to pay them a fee, we still ended up spending less money by paying them the fee, which of course is based on, whatever they found for us. And we didn't have to pay 9,000 euros over 3 months searching on our own. So that was the main reason that we started searching for our apartment before we got to Nice. We also knew that there is a shortage of apartments. Now, we didn't look at the worst time of year, which is summertime. So we did have in favor the fact that we were looking almost in spring. It was late winter, so the search was happening in February. And we were fortunate in that we found a few apartments to consider, let's say in mid-February. And that was within just a few days of when the Adrian Leeds group started our search. Now, does it always work out like that with Adrian Leeds? I doubt it, probably not. And sometimes people will go to Adrian Leeds, and depending on when they go and what's available, maybe Adrian Leeds will say, you know what, I just don't have anything right now. So it's not like, you pay the money and they're guaranteed going to find you something. So there is that piece of it. But my point is, there is a severe shortage of rentals here in Nice and in most big cities. And if you try to do it yourself, it's going to be harder than if you find a professional that has a lot of contacts in that particular city to help you look and start looking before you get to France. Now, a lot of people are not comfortable searching for a rental before you get here because it's like, well, I didn't actually go in the apartment. I want to actually see it and smell it and touch it and, open the refrigerator and all of that kind of stuff. And I'm with you on that. And my preference would have been there. But we decided for this very first apartment, because there was such a shortage of rentals here in Nice, that we would do our very best to find something that was going to be as close as possible to what we were looking for. Was it perfect, the one we found? Initially, no. When we started looking, I really wanted an unfurnished apartment. And this actually brings us to another question that many people have asked us. If we had it to do all over again, would we have been looking for an unfurnished apartment instead of a furnished apartment so that we didn't have to do as much work to the apartment to make it ours? Frankly, I wanted an unfurnished apartment. But when there is a shortage of rentals here in the city, and you don't want to have to move multiple times, you get to a point where you really feel like, here's an apartment. No, it's not everything we wanted. And no, it's not in the exact area that was number 1 on our list or even number 2 on our location list. But you know what? It's got good bones. And with our apartment here, Jeff and I loved the terrace. The terrace was it. The layout of the apartment, not exactly what we wanted. The fact that there was only 1 bathroom instead of 2, really disappointing. But apartments with 2 bedrooms and 2 baths, they're kind of like needles in a haystack. And in a rental market that's already tough, if you're going to hold out for that 2 bedroom, 2 bath, you're going to be waiting an awful long time. So this is why we sort of jumped at this apartment. Now, when we were looking for our apartment, our agent showed us, I think we started with 9 apartments that she sent us information on. And we went through the listings and we eliminated one by one a number of them because they weren't close enough to what we were looking for. They were not real far away from what we were looking for. I mean, they were furnished or unfurnished, and they were 2-bedroom apartments, but some of them didn't have a terrace. Some of them had a terrace and they didn't have a big terrace. One that we actually looked at was in the carré door area, which was actually our first preferred choice over by the promenade. We hoped to find something where you could at least have a little peek of the sea. Unfortunately, that apartment, in the master bedroom, it didn't have any closets. So we would have had to buy armoires, and it was a smaller bedroom than the bedroom that we ended up with as our bedroom. So to put armoires in an already small bedroom that had no closets to begin with would have been very tight. Then there was another apartment. It was 2-bedroom, 1 bath, and the second bedroom was on the second floor that looked like maybe it was originally an attic, and it had a sloped ceiling. Jeff would not have been able to stand up in that room, so that eliminated that. It was in a decent area. It was in central Nice, sort of where we are. When it came right down to it, this apartment that we found, in spite of the fact that we really didn't like probably most of the furnishings, we didn't like the fact that, in fact, it was furnished to begin with, we figured this was going to be our best bet, and so we jumped at the apartment so that we would have something that didn't cost us between 3,000 and 4,000 euros a month. And once we got here, we knew that if we were unhappy, all we had to do was give 30 days notice and go move somewhere else. Yes, we would have had to pay another search fee to Adrian Leeds, or maybe we would have found the apartment on our own, who knows. But we knew that there wasn't a huge risk in grabbing this apartment. And the biggest benefit for us was we had this gorgeous terrace, not, the biggest in the world, because trust me, we have seen huge terraces. But it's not a bad area. The central part of Nice, called Nice Centre, it was on our list. It just wasn't at the top of our list. And it did have 2 bedrooms. So that's why we jumped at this apartment. When we first got here, we thought, well, we'll ask our landlord if she would mind taking out all of the furniture we weren't going to use. And we took a leap of faith. There were other people, I think there were about 6 other people looking at this apartment. And that's the problem. When there's a shortage of rentals, for every apartment that becomes available, you're not the only one looking. And so if we had said up front, hey, if we rent this apartment, would the landlord agree to take all our furniture and stuff we're not going to use? Would she agree to take it out? We were warned that if we said that before we signed the lease, and 5 other people were interested in this apartment, and none of the other ones said, hey, we don't like the furniture, could you get it out? Chances are the landlord was going to pick somebody who wasn't going to make a fuss about anything, somebody who was just agreeable to everything. So we were Mr. and Mrs. Agreeable to everything, and we took a chance that when we got into the apartment, actually moved here a month and a half later, we would take a look around, make a list of the things we didn't want to use, and then send a note to the management company and say, hey, would you do us a favor and ask our landlord if she would be kind enough to remove these things, we're not going to use them, and she could just move them back in if and when we leave. So that's what we did. And unfortunately, our landlords said, no, I don't have a storage unit. On some things, she said, I don't care what you do with them. We had a dining room set and chairs. Not one chair matched the other. The dining room table had a piece of the edge of the wood was missing. And she said, in that case, she said, if you want to, you can get rid of those things as long as when you move, you leave me a table and chairs. And she knew we were going to buy a new dining room set. She said, well, maybe you can leave me your new dining room set. Right. No. Well, that isn't going to happen. But it made it very easy for us to say, okay, fine. We got rid of the chairs. And as you may have seen in prior videos, Jeff literally took that dining room table apart. And it's sitting under, I think it's under the bed in the bedroom, or maybe under this couch I'm sitting on. I forget where that ended up. So that's how you deal with the situation. If we could have found an unfurnished apartment, that was really what we wanted, because first of all, you can get a 3-year lease for that. And when you rent a furnished apartment, the rental laws only allow you to get 1 year at a time. But the good news with both the 3-year rental and a 1-year rental is the leases automatically renew every year unless either you or the landlord give notice. So anyway, that's my long answer to the question, is it really that hard to find a rental in Nice, France? Speaking from experience, I have to say, absolutely yes. Don't think you're going to come here and you're going to just go off on your own and, I'll find it real fast. Unless you have a friend of a friend of a friend who knows somebody, it just doesn't work like that. Okay, another question that we get a lot is, how did you keep your U.S. telephone number? I mean, how do you deal with calls to the United States? Well, we didn't keep our U.S. numbers. We actually came here with our U.S. telephone numbers on Mint Mobile, because for some reason I thought it was going to work when we got here. And I could not get Mint Mobile to work, even with their international plan. I just couldn't make outgoing calls. I just kept getting messages that the service just wasn't working. And I spent hours on the phone with the Mint Mobile technical people, and they couldn't figure it out. So we ended up dumping Mint Mobile. But the first thing we did when we arrived here was we went to the free mobile store. And I don't mean free cost-wise. I mean, it's called Free, F-R-E-E. And there's a free mobile store that's a short walk from where we're living. And so we walked over there with our phones and we said, we need a new French telephone number. And so on the spot, we got instant French telephone numbers. They put the SIM cards in our phone. If we didn't have space in our phone, they could have given us eSIMs, but we immediately had a French telephone number. In order to get that, we needed to have an IBAN number, which identifies a bank so that they can automatically withdraw money from a bank account every month. You can't just say, I'll come in and pay my bill. It just doesn't work like that. So at that point, we were lucky enough to have opened a French bank account, a France bank account, before we moved here. And I'll go through that as well later in the video here. So we had an IBAN number from that French bank account. We also discovered that we had a Wise card, and our Wise card, you have 2 accounts on your Wise card, if you have one of those. One deals with a U.S. bank that it's affiliated with, and the other one deals with a bank in Belgium that takes care of the euro bucket on your Wise account. So later on in time, after we lived here for a while, if I needed an IBAN number, didn't want to use my French bank account, I was able to just click on my Wise account and get the IBAN number for the Belgian bank that is connected to the euros on my Wise card. So that's how I dealt with that. But now, so we got the free mobile telephone numbers, our French numbers. Now, at the same time, since we had just moved here, we needed to set up internet and cable. And Free Mobile has a deal that if you take internet, cable, and cell service from them, and you just happen to want cell service that takes or that allows you to make calls to the US, you can get this plan for 19.99 euros a month, and that gives you unlimited calls, text, and data here in France. And also, it allows you to have unlimited calls to the US and text messages to the US. And if we ever go to the US, we can still use our French number in the US and make calls, send text in the US using that French free mobile line, and it's unlimited calls and texts in the US. Now, does it work for people contacting us? Well, not exactly, because they still have to dial a French number. So it only works for us to make outgoing calls to the US. So, and that was important for us only if we needed to call businesses in the US. So what do we do about our friends and family in the US who wanted to talk to us and didn't want to have to set up international service on their phones so they could dial an international number? We got them all to download a WhatsApp app. WhatsApp is free. And you can talk to people, you can message people, you can have video calls with people in France, in Greece, all over the US, all over the world, free. So all of our family and friends, or for the most part, I mean, there may be one or two who just didn't want to download that app, and they just don't call us. But let's say most of our friends and family, they've downloaded the WhatsApp app, and they call us. And everybody keeps their notifications turned on WhatsApp so that if we send them a message, their phone pings and they know, oh, check the WhatsApp app, somebody sent me a message. We can call them, they can call us, and so that's how we deal with that. So anyway, getting back to the Mint Mobile, we dumped that. And with that, we dumped our US numbers. So what did we do as far as those security codes? You know, the ones that our US credit card companies and our US banks want to ping us with to make sure it's us? Well, I went to tello.com. Now, we were already in France when I did this, so I had to turn on our VPN so that tello.com thought we were in the US. So I set it up to make it look like we were in Miami, and I opened Tello accounts. Now, for $6 a month, both Jeff and I each have a Tello account. Tello assigns you their phone number. If you want to use the number you currently have in the US, that's fine. Don't let it go like we did before you set up the Tello account. Set up a Tello account, and once you activate the Tello account, then you can go to Tello and you can request to port the number from your US service to Tello. And as long as it's still available, they can then change your number on Tello to whatever you had in the US. Now, the Tello account has to be billed to a US address. So, yes, you guessed it, we had to get a third-party address, but we had to do that in order to maintain our US bank and credit card accounts. So before we left the US, I connected with a company called physicaladdress.com. And for, I think it's about $10 a month if you pay it monthly. We do it annually, and so it ends up to be just under $9 a month. They give us an address that looks just like a street address. And so, it's like 123 Main Street, number 123. So it looks like maybe that's our apartment number. So I simply went on all of our bank and credit card accounts and clicked on contact information or profile and updated our address to that new address. And so our bank and credit card companies, if they have mail to send us, they send it to that address back in the US. So when I opened the account with Tello, I put the billing address for Tello at that address. Now we pay all of our bills and do all of our banking online, so we really never get any mail from the credit card companies or bank unless they're sending us a replacement debit card or credit card. So that isn't an issue. Now with Tello sent us SIM cards. And so they sent the SIM cards to that third-party address in the US, and that address, physical address, sent me an email, and they said, you have mail in your mailbox. I go there, I saw that it was the SIM cards in the mail from Tello, and then I requested that physicaladdress.com forward them to us at our France address, and they throw it in a FedEx envelope, and for about $25, they mailed the SIM cards to us. And you can batch mail. So for example, if I have 5 or 6 things that are received at that third-party address, I can open them, see what they are, and then let them sit there in our address, in our mailbox over there in the US. And when I have enough, I can say to physicaladdress.com, I want to batch mail all of these things, and they can take all 5 envelopes that are sitting there, throw them in one FedEx envelope, and mail them to us by FedEx, and we generally get them here in about 2 or 3 days. So that isn't a problem. So that's how we ended up with US telephone numbers. That's what we do for our French telephone service, US banks and credit card companies. That's how we got a telephone line here in France that allows us to call the US so that we didn't have to keep a US phone service and pay for international service. If banks or credit card companies want to call us, generally they'll send me a notice and say, can I talk to you or something? I go to my phone, I turn on the Tello SIM card, which is the phone number that they have sitting on our account. I turn that SIM card on, and then I say to the person who says, can I call you? I say, okay, fine. Once I see the SIM card is on my cell phone, okay, go ahead. They dial the number that I have on Tello, the US number. I answer the phone, good to go. People have said, is it possible to get a French bank account before you actually move to France? Yes, we did it. Now, how did I do it? Well, we were living in Florida at the time, and I contacted BNP Paribas that had a branch in Miami. Now, somebody told me somewhere that either they don't have that branch in Miami or that branch, I don't know. There's something about the branch in Miami. But anyway, we didn't open it through the branch in Miami, but I sent an email. I went online to the BNP Paribas branch in Miami, clicked on open an account, and sent a note to them saying that we were going to be moving to Nice, France. We wanted to open an account in the US with BNP Paribas before we moved so that we could start funding that account. And I wanted to know how to do it. They forwarded our email to the branch here in Nice, the BNP Paribas branch here in Nice, and the international accounts manager from Nice sent me an email, said that she had gotten my email from the BNP Paribas Bank in Miami, and that she would be happy to assist us in opening the account. So then she sent a list of documents that we needed to forward to her for review before they could open the account. Things like copy of each of our passports, copy of each of our birth certificates, let's see, a copy of our last U.S. tax return, copies, I think we had to send the last 3 months' bank statements from every bank and financial institution that we did business with in the U.S. We also had to send our last utility bill that had both Jeff's and my name on it from the U.S. It didn't matter that we didn't have a utility bill here. They wanted proof that we really had a residence in the U.S. And utilities. So we had to do that. Getting back to the bank information from the U.S., they wanted a letter of reference from our primary bank in the U.S., from someone at the bank, and they sent us a formatted letter that they wanted the branch manager to use when they provided a reference. And it had to say, you know, Mr. and Mrs. blah, 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 account number, blah, 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 have had their account with our bank for X number of years, and they handled their bank in a their bank account in a very satisfactory manner, and then sign it. Let's see, what else did we have to submit? Because our primary source of income was going to be our Social Security, our United States Social Security benefits, they wanted a copy of our Social Security statements. At the time when we opened the account, Jeff was still working. They wanted his last 3 pay stubs. Also required us to complete a United States I-9 form. And part of this is because they have an agreement with the United States. If you try to open an account as an American citizen, if you try to open an account outside of the U.S. in France, France is required to notify the United States that you are requesting to open a bank account in France. So we sent all of this information. She reviewed it. And it took her about a month to review all of this, and then she got back to us. And it's okay because we weren't in a hurry. And then she got back to us and she said, fine, now the last step is you must come in person to this branch to sign the papers. And once you do that, we will activate your account and then you can fund it. Bank accounts in France will not take cash. For example, you can't walk into a bank here with cash or a check and say, here, I'd like to make a deposit. You can only have money deposited into your bank account by bank wire or electronically. So once we got the okay that she approved everything in the account, we had to wait for the appointment to finalize that bank account until we came here. Now this we had done in May, and we were not coming back to Nice until the end of November that year. And so when we came back in November of that year, we met with her, we signed the papers, and she activated the account. Now, the one thing that we did not like about BNP Paribas was that she told us we didn't have to do it right away, but once we actually moved to Nice, we had to open a second bank account, a savings account, and deposit 10,000 euros in it. And it had to stay there for a number of years. We couldn't touch it. We didn't want to do it. And she told us the reason for this was because we're American citizens. And technically, we could very easily overdraw our bank account and then leave the country, and they would have no way to get the money back from us. So they wanted the 10,000 euros sitting in a bank account, sort of as a guarantee that there was 10,000 euros in the account. Because the way bank accounts work here in Nice, you get a debit card, and you go out and you shop and you spend money, and it doesn't withdraw it from your bank balance until a settlement date later in the month. So you can spend and spend and spend, and the ATM machine keeps spitting out money, and as long as you don't go over an agreed upon monthly spending limit, it just keeps spitting out money. But then when it goes to settle at the end of the month, if you don't have enough money to settle that account, then you're considered overdrawn. And BNP Paribas wanted that money in that 10,000 euro account to withdraw money from so that they never shorted on money. And the risk was very low. So we opened the account before we came here. We used the IBAN number when we rented our apartment, because we rented it before we moved here and we needed an IBAN number to have the rent automatically withdrawn from the bank account. We needed it to get our phone service, so we used that IBAN number for that. We needed it to get the electric started when we first moved here. But then after we got here, because we did not want to have to fork over 10,000 euros into an account and just let it sit there for years, we decided to open an account with Crédit Agricole instead. Crédit Agricole did not require the 10,000 euro secondary account. We closed our account with BNP Paribas and we moved everything over to Crédit Agricole. And then we started, once we got settled here, we started having our US Social Security checks automatically deposited into our Crédit Agricole account. So when you open a France bank account, for the most part as an American citizen, it's almost like when you apply for your visa, you need to give them all of this documentation for them to review. It reminded me of applying for a mortgage. It was like you give them everything except your firstborn child, and they review it, and then they get back to you and let you know if you can have the account. Next question. People always say, I don't want to move to Nice. Oh my gosh, no, it's so hot. I hate the heat. Well, we moved from Florida. Jeff and I know heat. Nice is not so hot. I have to tell you, since we have lived in Nice, and we've been here now, in April of 2025, it was a year. So we've been here, a year and 4 months. Except for maybe a few days or week, we have never really had oppressively hot heat. And I gotta tell you, watching the weather in other parts of France, in the northern part of France, up in the Paris area and towns outside of Paris, they had worse heat than we did. So it never really got oppressively hot. There is this gorgeous breeze that we have sitting on our terrace quite often in the evening, in the heat of the summer. If we go out there in the evening after the sun goes down, gorgeous breeze, absolutely beautiful. The other night we were walking on the promenade. It was beautiful, beautiful breeze off the water. It is very, very rare to have days here that are oppressively hot. Maybe once upon a time in the summer, it used to be hot, hot, hot. But we were here last summer and this summer, and never did it get to the point where it was oppressively hot. So you're probably asking, well, why do we have air conditioning? Because we're from the US. Because we're used to, in the summertime, having that level of comfort, not having to sweat in our own apartments. And so we got portable air conditioners. And if you go through our past videos, Jeff did a great video and talked about how we installed our portable air conditioner. So that's how we took care of that. And if we do have a day where it is really warm, we go out in the morning before it gets too hot. We may have lunch out and then come home. And for the heat of the afternoon, we may stay inside and not go outside again until maybe 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, when the sun starts to go down. But it does not get so hot the way people refer to Nice. It's not that hot. If you look at where we are in the world, we are not as far south as you might think. So it may be milder most of the year than it is in the northern parts of France, but it is never what I would consider really, really hot. hot enough to say, for anybody to say, oh my God, it's too hot. Go up and hang out in Paris for a month in the heat of the summer and tell me that it's not hot. And there aren't as many air-conditioned apartments up there in Paris. Well, I shouldn't even say that. There aren't a whole lot of air-conditioned apartments here either. If you're lucky, you can find an apartment that comes with air conditioner, but a lot of people do without. And quite a few people are starting to get portable air conditioners like us. In our building, I think Jeff and I are the only tenants that have air conditioning. We see our tenants who, and they're all French people, we see them downstairs in the lobby often, and on the hotter days, they will come down and they'll be sweating and going, oh, so hot, we just need to get outside. Our apartment is so hot, so hot. And I have said to every one of them who has said that to me, don't you have air conditioning? And they say, no. And then I say, well, how long have you lived here? Oh, so many years, we've lived here for 20 years, 8 years, 10 years. And you never got air conditioning? No, you have air conditioning? Yeah, we have air conditioning, we're quite comfortable. And they just sort of nod like, yeah, I guess you Americans and your air conditioner. Okay, another question. So the question is, what do you miss most about the US? Well, I would say we miss friends and family. But, you know, all of our kids are grown-up kids. They can find their way to an airport, and we've made open invitations to all of them. We've had some friends come to visit. We have some family coming to visit in the very near future. We have some friends coming to visit in a couple of months, and we've had other friends already visit. So, you know, our friends and family who want to see us, they have come. My son's been here twice. He'll be here again in December. You know, the world is really small. It's easily connected by airports. So that isn't such a big thing. There are like minor things that I can live my life without them. It would be nice. Like, let me tell you about some foods I miss. Sour cream. Like American sour cream. People have said, oh, you know, you can buy this and it tastes almost like sour cream. Other people have said, oh, you can get creme fraiche. Creme fraiche is delicious, but it doesn't replace sour cream. And for some reason, I just can't get into it on a baked potato. I really miss a nice dollop of real American sour cream on a baked potato. So I do without. Let's see what else. Cans of pumpkin. Do you know, they have pumpkins. They sell pumpkins in the grocery store. We're starting to see them now. But you can't buy a can of pumpkins. So if you want to make pumpkin bread, you have to get someone from the US to bring the can of pumpkin. Let's see what else. At Thanksgiving time, mostly you think of all these things that you miss. Cranberry sauce. I did manage to find cranberry sauce after Thanksgiving. Found it on Amazon France. And it was shipped to me from the UK for some reason. And the ocean spray cranberry sauce came in a jar. So it was a little jar. I think that little jar cost me about €9 plus shipping to get it here. But I got it. In fact, it's still sitting in the cabinet. We haven't used it yet. I guess I'm saving it maybe for this Thanksgiving. Let's see, what else do we miss? I miss really good bagels. Like, you can find bagels here, but the best you can find they're like Lender's quality bagels. I did find a bagel shop, and we went there in one of our prior videos, and they do have good bagels, and I always forget that bagel shop is over there. Are they exactly like good US bagels, good New York bagels? No. They're better than the frozen ones that I find at a frozen store called Picard. But often when I'm in the mood for a bagel, I don't feel like walking way over to that bagel shop that I did find. And it just seems like too much trouble. But, you know, if there was a way to ship bagels from the US to France, I'd probably pay the extra shipping costs to get them here. Another thing, I'm a Philly girl. Coming from Philly, I miss Philadelphia soft pretzels. Now, when I was growing up, Philadelphia soft pretzels were sold at stands on the corner, every corner downtown in Philadelphia, and you could get them for like a nickel a piece. And then I worked in Philadelphia for many years, and there was always a pretzel stand, a vendor right outside of my building. And I would stop there on the way walking from the parking lot to my building, and I would pick up maybe 2 soft pretzels, and maybe they were a quarter a piece. And I would go upstairs into my office, and I'd have them with my coffee or tea. And so I could always get them. By the time we moved to Florida, those vendors stopped selling pretzels on the street, and the only place you could find Philadelphia soft pretzels was in the Philadelphia airport. And so on the occasions when we were in Florida that we would fly up to Philadelphia, I would always look for the pretzel vendor and grab a bag of soft pretzels on the way. It's like there are just these little things that come to mind. We can live the rest of our lives without them. So we'll just live without those things. I'm glad that my life afforded me the opportunity to experience that real sour cream and real French onion dip made with French's onion soup mix and the soft pretzels and good New York or Philly bagels. I'm glad I had the opportunity to enjoy those for most of the prior part of my life. But, you know, we really don't miss a whole lot from the U.S. We love our life here in Nice, and this has become our best years. We have everything that we really need and want, and so there isn't really much more to long for. You know, and our dog, of course, she always loves these dog treats, popcorn, that people who have come to visit us in Nice have been so nice to bring her. One day she's going to have to like get over that and start eating French dog treats. But for the moment, we've been here for 1.5 years and we're still not out of popcorn treats for her. So, and to those who have been kind enough to bring us those treats for Bella, you know, she sends her kisses to all of you for those treats. So anyway, we don't miss a whole lot from the U.S. and we're quite happy without those things. And Jeff, in answer to the question, what do you really, really miss about the U.S.? What would you say you really, really miss about the U.S.? Anything?
I miss about... No.
I named all these foods that we can't get here, that I felt thankful that I got to experience them for the rest of the early part of my life.
Yeah.
It's not going to be the end of the world if I can't ever have them again. Are there any foods you miss from the U.S.?
Not really, because the food here in France I find is fresher, it's more organic, the fruits are more flavorful. I find the food here to be lovely, so no, I don't miss any foods. I find that living in France has been an upgrade to our lifestyle.
I agree. Okay, another question we get is, so now that you moved to France, do you and Jeff just sit at cafes all day drinking wine? Yeah, right. That's exactly how we spend our days. No. First of all, Jeff and I are both trying to watch our weight. It would be very easy to just go off to cafes and sip wine all day and eat baguettes. Our doctor continually reminds us to lay off the bread. Lay off the bread, lay off the starches, stop eating all the croissants and the pastries. And so we have cut down our wine consumption. For the most part, we may have wine at home, maybe once or twice a week with dinner. Most of the time, we have pretty much switched to sparkling water. I mean, you can add a twist of lemon or lime or throw some strawberries or watermelon in the sparkling water, and it's very refreshing. Even when we go out with friends, Initially, yes, we always used to want to buy a bottle of wine and have lots of wine. We have even stopped doing that. It's just, first of all, if I drink more than one glass of wine, it makes me tired. So I can't do it in the afternoon, and we typically make our primary meal of the day lunchtime. So we go out to dinner on occasion if we have friends who really, really prefer to go to dinner that night instead of lunch. We'll make an exception and go to dinner with them. We prefer to just do lunch. So if I drink a glass of wine at lunchtime, that one glass of wine makes me a little, I don't know, feeling lazy. And if I have 2 glasses or split a bottle of wine with another couple, by the time I get home, all I want to do is take a nap. And then, like, I'm too lazy. And I don't want to live my life going from afternoon wines to napping. That's not how I want to spend my senior years. So realistically, once you move here, you change your whole way of living. You don't live here day to day like you're on vacation. When we were on vacation, of course, baguettes every morning, croissants, sipping wine, going for apéro. It was nothing to spend an afternoon just sipping wine after wine after wine. We were younger then. Now that we're in our 70s, we just can't do that. So life here, when you live here, unless you can really hold your wine and not get tired, we just don't do that. So, I mean, we get invitations for apéro or, can we buy you a glass of wine or can we do this or that or whatever that involve wine. And we tend to prefer to go to lunch, mostly because we don't want to pack on a lot of calories with the wine. However, on occasion, if the only way to really meet one particular couple or individual is they say, look, I'm only going to be in town for this period of time and I've only got this one day, could you do me a favor? Let's meet for apéro. What we'll do is instead of having lunch that day, we will maybe snack at lunchtime and we will make apéro time, which is earlier than the typical dinner time. We'll make that kind of the time of day when we're going to have something to eat. And we won't order like a big meal because at apéro time, typically, you're going to get apéro things, appetizer. They call them entrees here. It's more like appetizer type things. So we'll meet somebody for apéro or an apéritif, and we'll just have light bites and call it a day. So that's the real way you live life in France, unless you don't gain weight from drinking a lot of wine or eating all those baguettes. We do love the baguettes here in France and the croissants and pain au chocolat and all the pastries. But if you're watching your weight, you just can't. So your mindset changes from this is how I am when I'm on vacation in France to this is my life and I get on the scale every morning and this is what my scale says. And oh my God, I didn't want it to say that. So if you move to France and you're older like us, you'll probably be the same way. And one other question, do we miss having a car? On a very, very, very rare time, like if we're at a store and we want to buy something big, and boy, it would be really nice if we had the car so Jeff didn't have to lug it home on a tram. Yes. Or if somebody tells us about this great town to go visit that we should go see, and it involves taking a train and then a bus and then an Uber to get to this town, yeah, then we kind of miss having a car. And on those occasions, if we really want to go there, we'll actually do the tram and the bus and the Uber, and we'll do what we have to do. But we like walking, it's healthier. Walking is healthier. We get lots of steps in. We set a goal for 10,000 steps every single day. And Jeff makes that 10,000 almost every single day because of all the millions of walks he does with the dog. And I try. I don't always get there, but I try. So Jeff just came back from one of those walks, speaking of walks, and I was answering the question, do we really miss having a car? And I said, no, only those times when there's something in the store we want to buy, and it would really be nice if we had a car so you didn't have to lug it home on a tram, or if we want to go to a town that in order to get to this town, somebody said you should go there. It will involve a tram or a train and then a bus and then an Uber and a long walk on those occasions.
But actually, in the last year, it's only been twice that we really felt like we needed a car.
And we weren't here in Nice.
Right. One time was to go to Paris around Christmas because all the trains were busy.
Right.
And the second was to go see the lavender fields, to go out into the countryside. So, do we miss a car? Yes. Do we need a car? No. So it's sort of the decision, what do you really need versus what you want? What we need, everything is here in Nice. So we're very happy with our life in Nice. In America, we wanted a car. We had 2 cars.
Right.
And we drove everywhere. But the city of Nice is laid out so much more friendly to walking that we find it's much more relaxing. It's better for us. We walk everywhere, we exercise, and our little dog takes us out all the time. So,
And if you're following Jeff's new channel,
yes,
little plug
a
here.
little plug.
Jeff, in his most recent video, talked about how pedestrian Nice is as far as a pedestrian city.
Yes.
And he's going to be talking about, in the near future, he's going to be talking about other options to get around, like bicycles
Right,
and
trams and
trams.
buses.
So,
We don't need a car. We find that in Nice we can walk or get public transportation everywhere we need to go. And we just find that because the city is compact and things are handy, when I used to go to the store, I used to get in a car and drive to the grocery store. Here I walk across the street to the grocery store. So it's much more convenient. It's much better lifestyle. It's more relaxing. And there's not the expense of the car and the insurance and all the other headaches that go along with having a car.
yeah. And it's helped you lose a lot of weight.
It does, yes.
So there is that benefit too.
Yes.
And the very last question, I have had people tell us they can't believe that we actually live here for less than 50% of the cost of what it took to live in the United States. We kid you not. We are really living here for less than 50%. I calculated it out. 47% of what we used to spend in the U.S. is what it costs us to live here, between rent, utilities, and food, and healthcare.
Now, in exchange, though, what we do, the apartment that we live in is half the size of the house that we lived in when we lived in Florida.
But it's fine. It works for us.
And at this point in our lives, this apartment is the perfect size for us. Our house in Florida had a 2-car garage because we had 2 cars. Only 1 car fit in there because we had so much junk piled up. So all in all, we're living a more, we're living a life of we've got what we need rather than things that we want.
Right, right.
Right.
We aren't living a lavish lifestyle. Do we go out to dinner a lot? Or not dinner, but we go out to lunch a lot? Yeah, we do.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And we can afford to. because we're saving so much money on our living expenses.
And actually, one of the things we've done is when we found an apartment that did not stretch our budgets. In America, we would try and find a house, and we would get as much house as we could buy, and we would get a mortgage, and we would figure out our monthly income.
Right.
At the end of the month, we had $25 left over. It's a very different situation here because we're living on Social Security, and we've tailored our budgets to the point where at the end of the month, we don't run out of money on our Social Security. So it's a much happier way to live.
And intentionally, we found an apartment that has rent that, you know, if God forbid something happens to either one of us over the years, and in this apartment with this rent, even if there are rent increases, individually, either one of us can afford to live here and pay all of our bills without the other. So if something happened to one of us, it would not be life-changing where we'd have to go back to the U.S. or figure out, you know, how we're going to avoid living on the street. We can each individually afford all of the expenses. I mean, that's how
much more affordable France is.
Right.
And 10 years ago, I would not have imagined that. Only by living here have we really experienced how much you get for a little amount of money. So
yeah. Now, we were both fortunate in that we both had professional careers and earned enough so that we're at the higher end of Social Security benefits.
Right.
Other people are not as fortunate. We lucked out. I mean, Jeff may have taken his Social Security earlier. I waited until I was age 70 so that I got the max. And so what I collect is almost as much as what he collects. He collects more than I do. But even with what we each collect, we're good.
Yeah.
We can each live individually. And, you know, he can go find a new girlfriend after I'm long gone. And,
Or you can go find like a guy with a yacht after I'm gone.
yeah, I'll head over to Monaco.
Right, there you go.
Look for Mr. Rich Old Guy with a big bank account, no kids, and 1 foot on a banana peel.
There you go.
And that's our little update. Those are the most frequently asked questions that we get in emails and comments to our video. And we just wanted to take some time and go over those things. We've said those things in other videos a few times, but
just giving you an update.
right. So that in case you're new in town here on our channel and you didn't hear them and you didn't watch that old video, these are the realities of living in Nice. So if you're back in the U.S. and you're on the fence, should we do it? Should we not do it? Is this a good time? Hey, you know, we watch what's going on in the U.S. If it were us, this would be the perfect time to get the, you know, out of the U.S., go find a happy life in France and not have to worry about what's going on back there in the U.S. So watch our videos if you haven't started watching them. I started making videos probably, well, the channel is over 4 years old, but I started making videos on how to move to France, how we moved to France, all of our preparation. How did we apply for the visa? How did we, once we got here, how did we validate our visas? How did we exchange our Florida driver's licenses for France licenses? How did we apply to get on France's healthcare or France's health system? And speaking of that, I have to say we got our France tax bill and we owe 0 taxes.
Because they gave us credit for what we paid on the United States in income tax in the United States.
Right, and because they didn't count our U.S. Social Security as income here in France, as far as social charges go, and any small other income we had, was not enough to require any kind of social charges. We did not get assessed any social charges. So doesn't always happen, but we are fortunate that we're allowed to be on the France healthcare system, and it doesn't cost us anything to be on the system. We still have to pay for a mutuelle,
Yeah.
and if there's a co-payment after that, we still have to pay for those costs. But just to be in the system, it doesn't cost us anything.
And one thing to remember on the visas,
Yeah.
there are different visas to come to France. We've had a couple of our friends who came here and did not get the long stay visa that they could renew. They got some other visa, and then when time was up, they actually had to go back to America and start the visa process a second time. So it's
I forgot to mention that. Yes, when you apply for your visa, if you're coming here to retire, you want a VLS-TS. If you don't say on your visa application that you want to be here for more than 12 months, and when you make the appointment at TLS for your in-person appointment, if you don't make it very, very clear that you want to retire in France and stay here indefinitely, you could end up with the wrong visa. So we know of 4 friends actually, over the years.
Yep.
4 friends who suddenly, when they went to renew their visa, they realized they didn't have the kind of visa that could be renewed here in France. So they have to go back to the United States and start the process all over again. So be very, very careful when you file your application
for visa.
and when you go for your in-person appointment. Make sure you are adamantly clear with the person at TLS. I want to retire in France. I want to stay in France. I want a long stay visa that allows me to renew it every year in France.
And our visa, at the end of our first year period, we reapplied, and they were actually so busy at the office, they gave us a temporary extension.
Right.
And then when the paperwork was done, then they gave us a new visa for another year. So it sounds like the visa offices are getting busier as more and more people are checking into France as a place to retire to.
Right. So that's a very important point I had forgotten to address. I'm glad you showed up to remind me. And that's going to do it for this video. So thank you so much for hanging in there and listening to all the questions and the answers. And as I said at the beginning of the video, if I have forgotten to answer your question, just leave me a comment below. And if we've already answered it in a video and I can think immediately of exactly what video that is, I will respond with a link to the video so you can watch that video. Or if it's something I can just tell you off the top of my head, I'll respond in the comments. And we look forward to seeing you in the next video. And don't forget to check out this guy's new channel. Help him grow his channel.
Okay.
And we will see you next time.
Bye.
Bye-bye.